Hey everyone, thanks for watching How To Pixel, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at the scenes. But not just the scenes, we're going to be looking at the behind the scenes. And apparently it just appears to be my notes for this video. So there you go, that's the behind the scenes. Thank you for watching, hopefully you enjoyed. I'm kidding. So I realize now that I actually have my notes here, while I'm looking at this, you're just gonna see scenes here, so that's funny. We'll get to that in a second though, but yes, in today's video, we're gonna be looking at the behind the scenes, not on that piece of paper. We're gonna be looking at the behind the scenes of the entire Halloween light show. Now I actually have the whole behind the scenes video already recorded, I did it on Halloween, but I didn't really include a lot of information in the beginning, about certain things with the show, like pixel counts and some other cool information things about it. So I wanted to add that, and I also needed to talk about something that's not going to be included in this video. If you can see right here, and actually I will move this over so you can see a little better, the entire dragon is in the garage, and that's because we picked it up right after Halloween because we need to get ready for the Christmas show. Now, do not worry, I did record a video all about how this is built and put together. I just have to go through watching the footage and editing it and all that stuff. And I was going to include that in this video, but this video is already almost an hour long. It might be an hour long after I add this in. I'm not sure. So I thought it'd be best to keep this as a separate video in the What the Prop series, just because there's really no point in me quickly showing it here in this video and then having another video just for the dragon. So, in the behind the scenes video, as I'm walking through and showing you stuff, I might talk about, don't worry, we'll get to that later, but actually, I'm going to have this in a whole separate video. So, I'm really sorry about that, but I just thought it'd be best to keep this separate since there's a lot to it. Now, this video right here actually took me a little bit longer than I was hoping to get out because I somehow, while running, doing stuff, long story, popped my kneecap out on my left knee and completely fell over, and it hurt, and I had to go to the ER and had a lot of interesting things happen with that. So eventually I'm probably going to have a surgery on this knee because this has happened before in the past and it was really bad this time. So yeah, quite fun. Now I can walk on it. It doesn't hurt horribly right now, but I can't really do anything else because I risk damaging it more. So somehow, on top of getting up the Christmas light show and also making videos here, I have to get all this stuff done. So please bear with me if the videos are a little slow. I'm trying to work through getting them out. Thankfully, I recorded this before I did that, so yeah, I didn't have a problem making this. All I have to do is edit it now. But you're not here to hear me complain about my knee, so let's just get started with some cool, interesting facts about the light show before I move on to the behind the scenes. Oh, and like always, if you want to skip to a certain part of the video, since this video is huge, please feel free to use the timestamps in the scrub bar and in the description below so you can get to whatever you want to see right now. Like if you want to jump to where I am starting off showing the electronics, use the timestamps and go to that, or just skip to whatever you want. But here's a picture of the light show. This is the 2024 Halloween light show. A couple of new things, a couple of different things. I show most of it except for the dragon in this video. And here's just some interesting information. So the entire light show has 3,060 pixels, including the 2 floodlights that I have. If you've seen the video of the light show that I have on my other channel, Bridgeport's Brightest Lights, you'll know in the intro that I say, this year the display features over 3,000 smart LED pixel lights. I don't know how I got that extra pixel. There's not an extra pixel, it's 3060, but I messed up in that, so yeah. There's a total of 9,191 channels, so that includes all of the pixels, that includes the fog machine that we have inside the dragon, and that also includes the DMX to RF transmitter. That's the thing that makes the bracelets and wands work wirelessly. But that is not including this screen that we have. The screen alone has 114,688 channels. So divide that by 3, and that's the total number of pixels it has. So Yeah, and adding that with other channels, the entire light show has a total of 123,879 channels. Now, here is just almost everything that we have in the show, like controller-wise, device-wise, all of that, not including wires or stuff like that, but here's just a list of some of the stuff we have running the show. We have, let me take a deep breath, 2 Pixel controllers, 2 Raspberry Pis, an FM transmitter, a DMX to RF transmitter for the bracelets and wands, a router, 3 smart plug devices, 5 smart receivers, 1 panel controller, 5 350 watt 12 volt power supplies, 3 350 watt 5 volt power supplies, 1 1200 watt 12 volt server power supply, for a total of 9 power supplies, and a partridge and a pear tree. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes. And I think that's really everything I wanted to talk about before I show the other footage that I have with walking around the display. So now I hope you enjoyed the next 50 minutes to an hour watching everything with the behind the scenes. And like I said, please skip to anything if you don't want to watch the whole video. But if you do, hopefully you find something interesting. So let's get started with the electronics here in the garage right over there that run the light show, or as I like to call it, the main control center. So every time I show this, I like to show first where the power for the display comes from. Because you can't have your display, you can't have your controllers, or even the computers, or any of it work if you can't have power. So everything in the display starts from these outlets right here, and these outlets are connected to a sub panel, which you can't see because the ladder is in front of it. It is right there though, and that connects to our main breaker panel. I've talked about this, and I do talk about this every single behind the scenes, but just to quickly summarize why we have this, you more than likely don't need a separate breaker box just for your light display if you're running it. The only reason we have it is because the outlets that were out here in the garage were also connected to our kitchen and to part of a bedroom, so there was a lot of load on the breaker, and we ended up popping it the very first time we ran the display. So we had a open 50 amp breaker that used to go to an electric stove, and we reran that out here into this breaker panel that has 2 20 amp breakers. One of them controls the lights in the garage door, and some outlets that don't have to do with the light show. And then the other one controls just these 2 outlets right here. So the whole display can take up to 20 amps with no problem, which is plenty. Now, if you've watched the other behind the scenes videos, you'll know that we only used to have 1 set of outlets out here, but now we have 2 outlet boxes. And the reason for that is we have a freezer now, so that needs an outlet. And we didn't like having everything just crammed into one spot. So that's why we decided to put in a second one just to give some more outlets. So these 8 outlets are everything that goes to the show except for this, which is for this freezer right here. Now, I like my light display to be able to be smart. I like to control everything from my phone and also be able to control it away from home if possible. That way, if there's any problems, I don't need to be here 24/7. And the first thing you could see as to why I like it smart is because every single electronic in the show is connected to some sort of smart plug. And that way, I can turn on or off the smart plugs and control certain devices. And the main reason I like to do this is so when the show ends at 10 or 10:30 at night, it can shut the power off to everything. And that way, all of it isn't running while the show isn't doing anything during the day. Because if you didn't know, the pixels still take energy even when they're not lit up. Because they have these microchips inside, and these microchips are always searching for a signal to tell them when to turn on. So those microchips are taking power, which can add up to a lot. In the past years, I've only had 2 of these Gosana, I think is how you say the name. I still don't know after 4 years. I used to only have these 2 smart plugs, which were okay, but I didn't like that because I either had to have all of the electronics on or all of them off. I couldn't control just specific ones because I had to plug a surge protector into there. The second smart plug was used just to control the DMX bracelets and wands, and that way I could shut those off separately because we were having some problems with them interfering with the locks on cars in the neighborhood. And if there was a problem, that way I could shut it off immediately. So I went on Amazon and found this smart Casa I think is how you say it, a surge protector. And all of the 6 outlets, or there's 6 outlets, right? Yeah, 6 outlets. I'm not going crazy. Each of the 6 outlets I can control from their app on my phone. And I can set timers for each of them. I could turn them on and off and have no problems at all. So I could turn on and off the individual Raspberry Pis. I could turn on and off the transmitter, the controller boxes. Everything can be turned on and off separately. So if I need to reset just one device, I don't have to kill power to everything. And I'm thinking about getting more of their products because I don't like now having to have 2 apps because I have to have an app for these smart plugs and an app for those. So did my light just die? Oh, what is, okay, we got a light show happening right here. The only thing in this entire setup that is not on a smart plug is this router up here, which I'll get to. And that's because that never needs to shut off. That can always be running. So that is where all of the power comes from. And you can see a lot of the electronics are plugged into the smart plugs. And then we have these 4 extension cords that go outside of the garage and go to other things to control the lights. And also the controllers outside. But now that we know where we have power coming from, I could talk about everything else. So starting up here at the top, and actually I'm going to take my phone out of this little thing so you can see it better. Starting up here is a router. Now this isn't fully necessary, but I like to have a separate light show network just for my light show devices. And that way I can keep them separate from the rest of our network. They don't interfere with anything, and it doesn't slow down the traffic. I have a whole series called Light Show Networking with Nick, talking about having separate light show networks or combining it with your main network or any of those options that you want to use. So I recommend if you don't know much about this and you want to set it up, starting off with the first episode in that series. So this router is connected to our main router via LAN to WAN, meaning that one of the LAN ports on our main router, this isn't an actual picture of our router, this is just an example, on here, this is connected to the WAN port on the router out here. So that way, this router still has internet access, and that way I can update the devices if I need to, they can get the time from the internet, whatever. But this will keep all the traffic separate, and it won't need to go back to the main router if these devices need to communicate. Because, like, if this Raspberry Pi needed to send a signal to here, it would have to go out to our main router through this Ethernet cable that goes in our attic and then plugs into our router, go to there, then come all the way back to go to the controllers. And if you remember correctly, I used to use this router right here, this Falcon router to control the light show network. But this router is from 2011 and it's very old, very slow, and the light show would randomly freeze. So what we did was we got a new router for our home network, and I took the old router that we used to use and made that the light show network router, and it still works perfectly fine for that. Connected to the router, we have 3 things wired and 1 thing that is wireless. We have the main Raspberry Pi wired into it, which is this one right here, this Falcon controller in here, a Falcon controller that's outside, and then we also have this Raspberry Pi right here, but this one is connected wirelessly, and I'll get to why in a second. Before we move on from the router, one other thing I wanted to add is I could still access all of the devices out here while connected to our home network, but I had to do something called port forwarding to make it able to work. And it's a little bit advanced, but I talk about it in the Light Show Networking with Nick series, so if you want to know more about it, you can watch those. So moving on to the next shelf is where we have 4 different of the main devices, or I wouldn't say main, but important devices that run things. Right here is a Raspberry Pi 4 with 2 gigabytes of RAM. It is running Falcon Player, the latest version, it's running that. Now, if you've never heard of Falcon Player before, it's a software that is meant to run Christmas light shows like these, and it's used to talk directly to the controllers. And I put all of my files on there, the sequence files, the audio files, everything, and then that I can use it to schedule when to start the show. I also have videos to that too, and I realize eventually I'm going to run out of cards that I can put up here since I'm limited to 5 per video. So I'll have links in the description too to these videos. So what happens is this Pi is scheduled to begin the lights for the Halloween light show to start them 6:15 p.m. every night. So it will grab the sequence and audio files. It will send the pixel data, or not the pixel data. It will send the E131 data, which is the data the pixel controllers receive. It will send that into the router, and then the router will redirect it to where it needs to go. And this controls an F16V5 and an F16V3. The audio is then sent out of this into the FM transmitter right here, which isn't on at the moment. But the audio comes out of there through a Sound Blaster Play 3, which connects to the USB port. The reason I use that instead of the built-in audio jack is because the quality of the sound is a lot better and it sounds way better. So that comes out of there. Then the Sound Blaster has an audio jack in it, which is higher quality, like I said. That goes into the FM transmitter through this audio cable right here. You can see it wraps around the back. And it's set to our station 90.7, which is the light show station. And yeah, then the cars can listen to it. And this is the CZE-05B transmitter. And it has worked great for almost, for 4 years now, is how long I've had it. It has a high and low power setting, so 0.1 watts or 0.5 watts. And I use the lower power setting because that is within the legal limits. And anything higher could get me in trouble if someone was to report me, but I don't think that would happen. But you never know. So that's what that Pi controls. Now then Pi, oh, and this Pi has a 32 gigabyte SD card in it, if anyone is wondering what size SD cards I use. I'm trying to include every little bit of information. Now next to it is another Raspberry Pi 4, also 2 gigabytes of RAM with a 32 gigabyte SD card. And this one controls just the screen. This is running Falcon Player in remote mode. This is the master. So basically this Pi tells this Pi what to do, then this Pi tells the devices connected to it what to do. So the second Pi is for just running the screen. Did I say that already? I might actually be going crazy. I don't remember if I said that or not. But since the screen is a very big item with lots of lights in it, this Raspberry Pi couldn't handle sending it all at the same time because it was lagging and I had some problems with it. So I thought getting a remote would be better. Now, the reason this one is connected wirelessly to the router is because the screen has to connect with an Ethernet cable into the Pi. So this will send a signal to the router through its Ethernet cable, then it will go out of the router wirelessly to this Pi, telling the Pi to do something with the screen. And then the Pi will tell the screen to do it by sending it out the black Ethernet cable all the way to the right, which goes up, and I'll show where that goes in a second. Actually, I'll just show it now. It goes up there, over here, and it meets this green extension cord. This green extension cord is the one that plugs in right there. And it goes up here, and then I have it going above the garage, and then it goes under, or through, or no, not through, which word do I want to use? Between the garage door and this piece of board up here. And that way it's not on the ground and it's not a tripping hazard, and it'll go right into the screen, which I'll show in a second. This Pi controls no audio. It's only that Pi that runs the audio. And yeah, that's, I think, basically it. The thing that drives the screen is a color light card. So this connects to the color light card and sends it the data and all that good stuff. Now, before I talk about this device, I want to move on to this controller box right here. Oh, very quickly before that, I forgot to mention, I ran out of smart plugs, so I had to use an outlet divider thingy to connect two things to it. So I decided to connect both the screen Pi and the screen itself to this one smart plug. So if I have to turn off the screen, it's also going to shut off the screen Pi, but that's okay. So in this enclosure right here, we have an F16 V3 and a single 12-volt power supply. This is a Cable Guard 1500 or CG 1500 I got from Wired Watts, and all of the pixels in the entire light display use 12 volts. So I only have 12-volt power supplies. Actually, that's a lie. The screen uses 5-volt power supplies, but everything else is 12 volts. This power supply plugs into this second outlet right here, so I can control it separately and control this controller separately, or power it on and off separately. It has a blue Ethernet cable right here, the one connected to the top, that runs out and goes into the router. So any commands that the Pi has for it will go from the Pi to the router, and then back out of the router through the blue Ethernet cable into here. Then I only have 4 of the 16 ports being used. One goes to the garage, one goes to a floodlight and our living room window, and then the other one goes to the pumpkins, and the final one goes to the door and other windows. So just basically stuff on the front of the house. Then the final Ethernet cable right here is connected to the DMX port on the F16V3. I have the jumpers, if I can zoom in so you can see, they're pushed to the, or not pushed, but pulled out and put on the right. That way it's selected for DMX. And that goes into the bracelets transmitter right here. Now, this transmitter, I don't know if there's a name on it. Nope, there is a little thing up here with information that, it tells you where it's from. Oh yeah, this is from GFLAI. I don't know if that's an abbreviation for anything or if that's just their whole name. But almost all of your DMX transmitters are going to come from there for wireless bracelets and wands, if you want to use those. You can buy them, though, from sites besides them, like Xlights, and there's a Facebook group buy where everyone gets together and places one large order. That way you get cheaper prices, and then you can get your wands or bracelets and then the transmitter. And that transmitter is connected to the first outlet there. That way I can power it on and off separately, just in case we do have those problems with the car again. This only accepts a DMX cable, which is basically a, what is it? I think it's an XLR. Is that it? Basically a microphone cable. That's what this uses, except even though it's the same connector, you're supposed to use a different type of wire that has a different impedance rating. That way it doesn't mess with the signals. But I don't have one of those, so I have an Ethernet cable that comes out from the controller that goes into there. And then I have an adapter that plugs into here and has an Ethernet, or excuse me, an RJ45 jack. The reason I say that is because I get called out a lot and I do mess up. That's technically considered an RJ45 jack since it's not Ethernet data. I'm not trying to confuse you, it's just the way it works. You can use an Ethernet cable, that still works fine. A Cat5 cable, a Cat6 cable, Cat5e. But Ethernet data is only sent, and it's only called an Ethernet cable if it's coming from like a router or using some sort of internet type data. DMX data would not be considered going over Ethernet because, yeah. I've explained this in other videos and I just don't feel like going into the whole conversation again. That way this video can stay short. And then there's also a very short wire coming out of the antenna spot. And the reason why is the antenna was like this long when it came and it transmitted all over the neighborhood. And the problem with the cars was happening everywhere and I needed to get that range way lower. So I just cut off a little piece of wire and put it in. So that way the signal stays within a few hundred feet of the display. Now, if you're curious as to why I'm using my F16V3 in here instead of my new F16V5, that's because I put that into the yard. And the reason why is I didn't feel like it was getting much use in here. I didn't have much connected to it other than just using the DMX, or not the DMX, the receiver outputs. So what I did is put that in the yard, and I still have receivers connected to it, but I'm also using 8 of the pixel ports on it. And that's what controls everything other than the house face. The house face with the windows and the door and stuff is from this controller. And the F16V5 is connected through, I think through this yellow Ethernet cable right there. And that goes into the router, and it's a 50-foot cable, and it runs out to that box. So that is the first section of the behind the scenes with everything over here. So next up, all of the cables that come out of devices to go to things outside of here all come bunched up into this wire. And then they, if I can move this over here, bunched up into these wires, and I have them zip tied together, and they all come down, and there's a huge mess of wires down here because I didn't feel like organizing them. And they go through a hole that we have in our garage, and that wraps around to go to other devices, the controllers, and whatever else needs to be ran. So now let's go take a look at where those go, and we can get to everything that is outside. So all of the wires come out of here, like I said in the last clip. They come out through a hole that we have between the inside of the garage and the outside, and all of the wires come out into this giant jumble of cables, which I like to call the highway of cables. The reason for that is because these are basically the main cables that go to everything, and it's like the main highway, and they all divide up farther down the road. The only cables that don't come out of here are the cables for the screen, which I showed you come up the garage right here. So over here we have the power wire and we have the Ethernet wire. I have them zip tied to a screw on the wall, and then they come up here, and I have them going on top of this bar that's part of the garage. And then the wires stay right up there above the garage. They're taped up there so they're out of the way. And then once it gets to the middle, I have this whole jumble of tape to keep it flat, and that way the garage door can shut and it can push on this, and it doesn't push hard enough to like ruin anything. So they just come down and then they go into the screen. The reason I did this instead of having the wires on the ground going into that hole is this way you're less likely to trip, and I left a lot of slack so I can move the screen quite wide open and the wires still aren't like being pulled too hard. Now the screen takes 2 outlets, so I have this cord that has 3 outlets on the end, and one of the outlets, or one of the cords, go to 1 power supply, then the other one goes to 2 power supplies inside. There's 3 5-volt power supplies, and you can't put them all on one extension cord because most people recommend a max of 2. That way it's safer and there's less load on a single cord. And then the Ethernet cable also comes through this, and there's a hole underneath, and I have it taped up so nothing can get in there, just the cords, and those go in there. So now this is the whole screen right here. It is 7 panels wide by 8 panels for height. They are P5 panels, so it makes the resolution, I think, 448 pixels by 256, if I'm not wrong. Every year we have a lot of problems with this screen just because I'm pretty sure the panels I got are completely junk. They chip at every single corner where 4 panels meet, or on the edges. You could see like how a bunch of the plastic is gone. You can see, if I can get the light to not reflect, you can see right there. And then if it gets hotter later today, which it probably will, we're gonna have like record Halloween night temperatures. But you could see right here, the plastic starts coming off the front of the panel. And this isn't bad. This is actually a very small amount. It will be horrible later today once it gets hotter, and lots of plastic will start coming off. You could see it right here, how it's sort of lifted higher than the rest of the pixels. I can like kind of push it back on, and it stays for now since it's cooler. So what I've been having to do is put a sheet over the front of it during the day so less heat touches it, because this is pure black, so it absorbs all the heat. And it got so bad that earlier this week, I could feel the heat right here. So I ended up putting a fan on this one vent, blowing in, and then the heat was coming out, and it was hot. I took the back off one day, and I felt the inside, and it was like touching a hot stove. It was so hot in there. And yes, there's a color light card. I think it's the 5A-75B. I think that's the code for it, or the name, whatever. That's what runs this. And if you want to see the whole video about how I built this, everything that's inside, how I built the frame, check out this video up here, or I might have already ran out of cards, so I'll put it in the description. But that's a video specifically for the screen. Now moving on, I'm going to talk about the front of the house. And one of the cords that we have coming out immediately that goes to the F16 V3 is this data cable right here, which goes into the garage and powers the garage lights. I am using bullet pixels. They're spaced at 4 inches apart, and I have just your normal strip holding them. Now, for this strip that we have on the garage and on the windows and everything on the front of the house, we had to find a new design to hold the strip up because we got new siding. And obviously you don't want to put holes right into new siding, because normally what we did is took a screw and screwed through the strip and just right into the house. But yeah, we can't do that now. So if we take a look in here, I'll make a little spot to show you. What we did was we took some washers, and then we have these magnetic hooks, and they hook right to the washer like that. They're very strong. I think they're rated to hold up to like 40 pounds or something like that. We painted one side of the washer white to match the trim around everything that the strip would be onto. And then the idea was to take a little sticky thing, hook it to the back, and then stick it onto the trim. That would allow us to pull these off if we ever wanted to without damaging the siding. And then we'd hook these to the strip or whatever we're mounting to the house. Like, we're probably gonna have to do this with the wreath when we set that up for Christmas. And then you could just stick it to the washer and it would hold on the side of the house. However, that did not work. Most of the washers were being pulled off of the trim. The magnets were holding, but the sticky stuff wouldn't hold. So what we actually had to do was get some super glue. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was more than super glue though. And just glue them there permanently. It's still better than putting holes in, but now we can't take these off. I'm sure we probably could have found something to make it work, but we were running low on time, and gluing them was probably the best option. Now, it still isn't the best because there's two problems. One is if these magnets slide around, it scratches the paint. And you can already see there's a scratch on this washer just from me showing you how it hooks. And like you can see up here, there's almost no white paint on parts of it because of how it's been sliding. So I'll probably have to repaint them. And then the second thing is with this, I can't get the strips to be as tight as they used to. You can see the droop there. If I tried to pull these so they were perfectly straight, it would either pull one magnet off one side or one off the other side. And if I get them mostly tight, if it gets colder out when the strip becomes more rigid and doesn't expand, it will pull the magnets off. So it's not the straightest. It doesn't look amazing up close, but when you're looking from the road, you can't really tell. But we're probably gonna have to find a solution for next year because this is a little annoying to me. But once these are on the side of the house, we just take a zip tie and zip tie the strip to the hook. You can see we did it up there. And yeah, so that's how all of the lights are being held up for now. So that's the garage. It goes all the way up and around and then down over here, and there's nothing connected at the end. I think it's 66 pixels, no power injection. Oh, and I forgot to mention too earlier, all of the lights run at 30% brightness. That's the brightness I use for the show because anything brighter takes a lot of power, and there's already so many lights, it doesn't need to be brighter than that. There's just a few things that take different brightness. The pumpkins, I have those at 100% brightness. That way the lights inside shine through. The floodlights, I put those at 50% this year just so they weren't being like drowned out, because since we're adding so many lights, you can't see the floodlights that well. So I made those a little brighter. And oh, and then there's certain pieces on the dragon that are a little bit brighter, like the eyes and the inside of the mouth, and we'll get to that later. Continuing on to the highway of cables, another cord we have coming out of here goes into the pumpkins. These are just plastic ones that I found from Lowe's. I have two different kinds. I have this one and this one that's a little bit taller. And inside there's either 12 or 13 pixels depending on which section it is. And just those few pixels at 100% brightness lights up the inside of the pumpkin so you can see it from the road. I did have to spray paint these this year because this yellow color at the top, this is the color that they used to be from sitting in the sun, and it was like a yellow pumpkin. It did not look right. So I had to spray paint them orange because just sitting in the sun had been killing it for 4 years. And all of the pumpkins are hooked together. So out of this comes a wire that goes back into the highway of cables, comes out into the next one. You have 12 or 13 pixels in there, comes out of there, goes under the door. Then you have 12 or 13 in there, and then 12 or 13 in this one. And the reason I hook all of these together is that way when Halloween's over, I can just unhook all the pumpkins, and then the wires I can take out, and that way they're not connected to anything else that's important. So far, all of these things have been on the F16 V3 controller in here. And the next thing that's also on that is this floodlight and this window outline. So a data cable comes out of here into this 10-watt floodlight that I got from Wired Watts. They have a spot on the back where you can put a stake in them, and they usually come with a stake. But since this is on our driveway, you don't need to have that. So yeah. Then out of the floodlight comes another wire that goes back this way, and it comes up to hook into the window outline. And if you'll notice, this is one big window now. We used to have two windows, but when we redid the siding and everything, we had to redo the windows because it was a whole problem. So now, instead of having 2 windows, we just have one big one that I outlined with strip. And it starts off here, it goes down this way, up and around. The lights are 4-inch spacing again, and they're bullet pixels. I think this design with the magnets would work a lot better if we had square pixels or flat pixels, but I didn't have any of those this year, so we had to use the bullets. And with the bullets, you can't get them all the way to sit against the house that well. So maybe if you're gonna try and use this design, try square pixels. I have the same thing with the hooks and the magnets in each corner, and then since this is such a long run at the top and bottom, there's also one in the middle and here. And then the final thing that's attached to the F16 V3 is the door and these other 2 windows. So we have a data cable coming out of the high wave cables right here into the door with the same design. It is 4-inch bullet pixels, 4-inch spacing. They have the magnets connected to the washers. It goes up here, comes across, then down and out there. And out of there comes a data cable that goes into this window right here. So the data wire comes into here, and you'll notice there's 2 pixels that aren't in anything. And that's because the trim on these windows also got redone, and it made the windows slightly smaller. So I had to adjust all of the pixels. And at the time, I really didn't feel like cutting off 2 pixels just to move the pigtail up. So I just have these nulled out in the controller. On the output settings, I just have null pixels set there. This also uses the same design. Oh, and I forgot, I still had some of them. Some of the washers still have the sticky stuff because they didn't fall off. And you can see this one's already starting to peel off. I don't know how long that's going to stay, so I might need to fix that eventually. Goes across here, 4-inch spacing, comes out from there into this floodlight, another 10-watt floodlight. And then out of there, we have a small data cable that comes up into this final window right here. It's the exact same thing as that window. And then you'll notice at the end, there's a bunch of wire here, and this is going to eventually connect to the wreath, which will be here for Christmas. And this window will actually be put on the controller box over here. And that way, it's not too much with the other window and the door on the F16 V3. So that's everything connected to this F16 V3 box. Now I'm going to move on to this box here in the yard, which is where the F16 V5 is. So right here is the F16 V3 with the yellow Ethernet cable going into it. This connects to the router, and then the main Raspberry Pi will send all of the pixel data or the E131 data here. And then I have a single power supply, which you can hear the fan is on because the box is warm. The light show was just running not too long ago this morning. It normally doesn't run in the morning, but I had a special situation that I needed it on for, so it's still hot since I haven't opened the box and since the lights were running. This is a single 12-volt power supply. It's powering the right side of the F16 V5, so that way the whole board can get power, and all 8 pixel ports have power. And on the pixel ports, 3 of them go to the P stakes, and then the other 5 go to the 5 arches, and one of the arches also has the Tune 2 sign connected to it. And the other 4 arches that don't have the Tune 2 sign connected to it will have candy canes chained after them once Christmas time comes. Then I have 3 Ethernet cables up here. These go, oh, and that one looks a little loose, okay. These 3 go to 3 other boxes in the display that have differential receivers in them. One in the Dragon, one by the driveway arches, and then one on the roof. The final Ethernet cable is connected to the DMX output, and this goes to the fog machine, which is by the Dragon. So there's a lot of Ethernet cables. I must have hundreds of feet of Ethernet cables. And also on the power supply, there are 2 power injections. One of them goes to the arch with the Tune 2 sign, since that's over 200 something pixels. And then the other one goes to a section of P stakes, because there's 2 sections of 30 P stakes and a section of 40 P stakes, and the section with 40 needed power injection. Now, I said this last year and I still haven't done it. I should probably do it next year. This box more than likely needs another power supply if I add anything else in here. Technically, I didn't add anything to this power supply since the driveway arches and the mini trees are on a separate box with a separate power supply. But this power supply is almost at its max use. So that's everything in here. 3 receiver outputs are being used, 8 pixel ports, and the DMX output that's in here. I have the box screwed into a wooden board, just like a square board. And then I have 2 pieces of PVC pipe going into the back of that board. And that's why I used to stake it into the ground, because I ran out of stakes over here. I also forgot to add, over here we have a junction with the highway of cables, and a single extension cord comes this way. And you'll see there's like 3 Ethernet cables or something. One of them is going to the box, which is the yellow one for the Ethernet data. The other ones are coming out. I think there's 4 Ethernet cables total. 1 going in, 3 coming out. The other 3, they're coming this way. 2 go to there, to the Dragon. 1 for the controller box, 1 for the fog machine. And then the other one comes to the box up on the roof. But this single power cord that comes through here, it's this orange one right here. And plugged into it, I have a little junction area with more outlets. 1 to go into the controller box. Then this other one for this orange extension cord, which goes to that controller box over there. And then I don't think I ever really show this for my power injections. Do I have one that's not taped up? Let me see here. Okay, I don't really have one that's taped up, but I can still show it. The power injections, I have just 2 wires going into the box for them, the positive and the negative. And all of my power injection wires have a male output. Usually, any data coming out of the box has a female pigtail output, since the pixels have a male start end. That way the male and female can connect together. But when I add power injection, that's usually at the end of something. So like at the end of this arch, if I need a power injection, this arch has a female pigtail on the end. So I can't hook a female into a female. So all of my power injection wires have a male output. That way they can connect to the female side at the end of a prop. And if it needs to go in the middle of a prop, then I just have a splitter that has a female spot to plug in a male pigtail. So they come out, and then I have an inline fuse in every single, and this one's coming on tape so you can kind of see it. I'll tape that back up later. I have an inline fuse in every single power injection, and that's just to keep it safe if there's any problems. Your pixel ports are already fused on the controllers. The F16 V3 has automotive fuses on it, and then the F16 V5 has E fuses, so it's protected. But your power injections are never protected, so all of them have some fuse that I calculated what the best size would be for it. So like for this one, 7.5 amps is what I used. And this inline fuse helps protect it from problems happening if something gets shorted out. And then you can see the male pigtail on this side going into the female wire to run down wherever this power injection goes. So now on that box, there are 3 main groups of props. You have all of the piece stakes, you have the 5 arches, and then you have the Tune 2 sign. And all of that is on that box. So I'll start off with quickly showing the arches. Each arch is custom built. There are 50 pixels in all of them. The only thing that isn't custom is the stuff that holds the pixels, which is just, I don't remember the exact name of it. I got it from Biscoyo. It's just an arch holder. It's the large arch on Biscoyo. And then we have a piece of PVC pipe going into the board, and then it's bent, it's 1/2-inch PVC pipe. It goes into this side, and that way we can zip tie the pixel holders to here, and then we have the bullet pixels going into it. I just made recently, about a month ago, a video just about arches and how this design is built, and it's in the What the Prop series. So I recommend checking that out to find out exactly how this is built and everything involved with it. Now there's 5 arches. There's that first one, there's the second one, there's the third one, 4th one, and then the 5th one. And on the 5th one, the power and data come in on this side. It comes out, and then there's a cord coming out on this side to go into this Tune 2 sign. I have this Tune 2 sign here so the people can see what station to tune their radios to. Since I don't really have anything else that shows it, I used to have the screen display it every few seconds, but now that I'm trying to run cooler effects and videos on there, I don't really want to do that. So that's why I have this Tune 2 sign. This is from Biscoyo, and you can get this custom made for your radio station. I think this was $30. It's a very big Tune 2 sign, which I like. It is 44 inches, and then it is 23 inches height. Oh, that came off. About 23 inches in height. That's the size of this thing. Mine takes 191 pixels, but depending on which number you tell them to cut out on here, it will be different. The only thing I don't like about this is it doesn't come with a model you can put in Xlights, and it doesn't come with any specific way to wire it. So you have to come up with a way to wire it, and then you have to put it in Xlights. So I had to basically go through and find out what is the best way to have all the pixels go through here, but then be able to reach every single one without having wire jumps in between the pixels. So yeah. And then on the back, we have 2 stakes and this board, which tries to keep it straight, but it's been failing a little bit. It's actually quite bent. We'll have to fix that before the Christmas show. But 2 stakes into the ground, and this board is supposed to help it from bending like that, but it doesn't. We have the data coming in on this side. It goes through the whole 191 pixels. Then we have power injection on this side. This little connector is just where 2 sections of pixels happened to join. And then the final thing on this box are the piece stakes, which are like one of my most favorite props I've added. They are awesome, and I really recommend getting them if you have a large space you want to fill. Last year we only had 70 of them. They were in the whole front yard and not the back half, but then this year we got 30 more to fill in the back half. That way the whole yard is basically covered in piece stakes. Now we have 2 halves in the front. We have 40 on that side, we have 30 on this side, and then the back are all connected together. So those are the 3 sections that go into the controller box. And I'm not going to talk about how each stake or how the stakes are built, because I also have a full video talking about how I made these and where I got the pixels from and how the wire jumps in between them. And I recommend checking that out too if you want to see how to build these. And then for this left section, this is the section with 40 piece stakes. Oh, and it looks like one happened to fall over here. How did this happen? Well, let me just quickly fix you. There we go. Oh, maybe a little lower. Perfect. But for this half, since there are 40 piece stakes, I have a power injection cord coming in right here at the very end of this section to give it power injection. Now for this next box here, this is a new box we got this year. We have the orange extension cord at the bottom that was connected to that junction I showed earlier. That comes out, and then there's this gray cord that plugs into it, and that's what feeds the power supply. Right now, only the 3 driveway arches are connected to this, but the mini trees will run off of this once Christmas time comes. I did that so it would take a little bit of the load off the other yard box. So in here, this is actually a very simple controller box, not much to it. A single 12-volt power supply and a single V5 differential receiver. The power supply has power coming in from that gray cord. It has a positive and a negative coming out to feed the receiver. The receiver has an Ethernet cable that goes to the F16 V5. Then there are 4 wires that come out of the receiver right now. 3 of them go to the driveway arches, 1 wire for each arch. And then the 4th one just comes up. I have it sitting up here. It doesn't go to anything right now, but it will go to the mini trees. There's also a power injection hooked up, but that doesn't go anywhere yet. That just will go to the mini trees as well. So a very simple controller box. And then here are the 3 driveway arches that are connected to that controller box. And these turned out really well, actually. I like them, but this is not the original design. You can see how it comes straight up. Then there's a 45 angle, then it goes straight across. Then there's another 45 angle, and then it goes straight down. My original plan was to have a piece of 1/2-inch PVC pipe go into, or just sit here and have a stake go into it to go into the ground to hold it. That piece would come up some amount of length, and then we could hook another piece to it that we bent across the driveway into just another straight piece over there. And we bought enough PVC pipe to do that. We bought like 10 sections of 1/2-inch PVC pipe, but then we set it up, and I think I have a picture. If I do, I'll show it on the screen. I might not. But the whole thing wobbled back and forth like crazy. Like it would dip on the inside. There was no arch to it. It came up and it dipped and then went up. It did not work at all. So our second idea that we got was we got EMT pipe, and it still wobbles. I will admit that. I'm barely shaking it and it moves. This will probably move with a little bit of wind, but it won't fall over. It's stuck into the ground with a piece of rebar. So we have the EMT come up, And then we had to get a pipe bender, and we bent this at a 45-degree angle so it would bend around. And then we bent it again at a 45-degree angle. It comes straight across. And then we have a little junction right there. We have a straight piece, and then we have a junction there going into the other section. Now, we did not end up getting enough EMT, so once it reaches here, that is as low as it goes, and then we just have a piece of 1/2-inch PVC pipe to go down the rest of the way. That way this doesn't slide down. It's sitting on top the PVC pipe. And then we have a piece of rebar inside this PVC pipe, goes into the ground a long ways and comes up, I think, to about here in the EMT, and that's what holds this from falling. And that's the same for all of these on both sides. Actually, wait, I think that's incorrect. Yeah, it is on this side where the fence is. It's just the, right here, the, what is it? I forgot my words. The rebar, there we go. And it's just zip tied to the fence pole. We don't need it to go into the ground. It just is sitting flush on the bottom of the driveway right there. It's not in the driveway, it's just sitting there. So that's how these are constructed. But now, how do we get the pixels on them? Well, my original thought was to just use chroma trim or use strip or something, but you can't really get that to bend. Now I think I probably could have used it since it's not a full arch, but since it was going to be a full arch, there's no way to get it to bend like that. So what we actually did, we saw this in another video on YouTube of someone having these arches. They took garden edging, zip tied it to whatever pole they were using to hold this, and then they had the pixels go in the holes where normally you'd put the stakes to put this on the ground. Now, we did have to drill out each hole slightly bigger so the pixels would fit, but it wasn't a huge deal. And the good thing with this is it can bend around the corners. So we have this garden edging, it bends around the corners, it's zip tied every few sections. And then we also ran out of that. So once you get to the lower spot, I just have chroma trim zip tied to the piece of PVC pipe and the rest of the pixels going down. Each arch has the male end where the data coming in on this side, here, there, and they both, or all three of them, end on this side, and there's nothing connected to them. I think there's 108 pixels in them. What else? Anything else about them? Oh, and then we also have pigtails where each of the junctions are, so we will have to cut, or no, the garden edging is actually already cut. We could just take apart the EMT spots up there. We can unscrew it so the EMT comes separated. And then we could store this in 3 different sections. We'll have this section that goes from here, has the bend and goes down. We'll have just a flat middle section, and then we'll have the other side. And that should make it a little easier to store than having one giant arch, but I still don't know where we're gonna put it. If you want more information about how this is built, let me know and I can make a what the prop video about this maybe sometime in the future. But that is how the driveway arches are built, and that is everything connected to the yard box. Now, I want to save the dragon for last because that's the coolest thing. I'm going to move up to the roof now. So the roof box controls 4 different things. It controls these 3 singing faces, and it controls the entire roof outline, which is 370 pixels, I want to say. And the singing faces are each 143 pixels. If you remember from other years, the controller box used to be on this side since it had to have an Ethernet cable going to the garage, so it was closer over there. But now that this has receivers in it that connect to this box, we moved it over here just so that the wire can just run up there, up the gutter, and then on the side of the gutter, and then up there. Now let me show you what we have up here inside this roof box. So I actually have a little bolt holding it shut. I forgot about that. Let me see if I can unscrew that. Okay, I got that off. I was having some problems with this controller box not shutting because this is a technically new type of controller box, but I'll get to that in a second. So it sounds like the bottom fan in here is running. It's probably extremely hot in there with the sun beating on it, and also the show was running like 3 hours ago. So in here we have 2 12-volt power supplies, and we have 2 SRX1 differential receivers. These are not the V5 ones. I have a V4 and a V2.01 in here. I wanted to put V5s in here, but I ran out of V5 receivers. So we have this white power cord that comes in, and it has a power cord that comes from the highway of cables down there. The extension cord comes up into this green box. That way the plug doesn't get wet, and it comes in here. goes and feeds both these power supplies. And right now, only the bottom power supply is being used. The top one, which is on, is just not going to anything. It will be used for the snowflakes. The left receiver is what controls everything right now, and then the right receiver will be used for the snowflakes. There are 3 or 4 wires that come out of the left receiver. 3 of them go to the singing faces, so 1 here, 1 to the green one, and 1 to the blue one. And then 1 goes to the roof outline, which starts all the way on the right and then comes around this way. We have a power injection up in that corner and then a power injection at the very end. So we have a T over there for the power injection in the middle. The way we hold everything on the roof, except for the roof outline, is with sandbags. That way we don't have to attach anything to the roof. We have these little frames on the singing faces. What it is just PVC pipe coming out, and then it's a flat piece of metal that curves up and goes into the singing faces. You can see it zip tied there, and then the PVC pipe makes a little loop thing, and we just have a sandbag sitting on top of it. I've shown it more in detail in other behind the scenes, so you can go look at those. And the roof outline, what this is square pixels with 4-inch spacing in just normal pixel strip. The strip is zip tied to 1/2-inch PVC pipe in 10-foot lengths, and then we have these little clips that the PVC pipe is zip tied to, and then these slide under the shingles. And I think for only the front they use these clips. The rest use just some metal clips, which aren't as sturdy, but it holds it perfectly fine. They just don't stay under as well, and we couldn't use those in the front because it kept sliding off in the front. But for everything else around the roof, it works fine. Now at each section where the pipe, where there's a gap in the pipe, we have pigtails there. So there's a whole lot of pigtails. It's only 30, it goes 30 pixels, then there's a pigtail. But that way we can detach all of these sections, keep them separate, and store them separately. And that way you're not trying to store a 50-foot long piece of PVC pipe. And then we have 3 power injections coming out of this box. All of them have fuses. 2 of them go to the roof, and then 1 of them is going to power inject all 6 snowflakes. We have a giant wire that has lots of pigtails in it that can connect to each snowflake that needs power injection, so it's off of 1 cord. Now, I absolutely despise this controller box because the cable guard controller boxes, they apparently don't exist anymore. I couldn't find them anywhere. So there's these ones, which are extremely similar, except they're not. The back plate, though, you can see from the random spots where I have screws, you can't put screws in the 4 corners like you used to be able to do with the other ones. There's just no holes for them. So like there's 2 screws here and here, and then like there's 1 up there, and I think there's 1 down here or something. And that's how I mount this into the controller box. And then this doesn't even shut all the way. It kind of does, but that's why I have the bolt in the hole, just so it doesn't pop open and get wet. And like I said, I've explained the roof outline and the singing faces a lot more in detail in other videos, and one day I'll make a video specifically about them. So yeah. And that is the entirety of the behind the scenes video. I don't need this anymore. That was a whole lot of information. Hopefully you found all of that useful. I tried to include everything I possibly could while keeping this video not more hours than it already is. So, like I said, a lot of the elements I will or already have a separate video talking just about them. And the dragon will be either the next video, or I might have one other video after this between there that's really interesting, you could say. But since I couldn't go over every little piece of information about everything, if there's any questions or comments you have, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, and I will try to respond as soon as I can. But there are a lot of comments coming in since it's Christmas season, Halloween season, light show, building season. So if I don't get to yours, maybe I'll get to it after the light show ends. But that's going to conclude it for this video. Now, I do have a slight little snippet of something interesting that I want to show you that could be in the next video, or maybe I'll make the dragon video next. I'm not sure. So thank you very much for watching. Enjoy this little snippet coming up, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, hey, did you say that you wanted to land an airplane at my house? No problem at all. Please feel free to use my lights in the sky to land your airplane.